All right, to close this out here, let's get to Tetsuo's topic.
All right. Well, what I wanted to bring to the table today was the new Koei Tecmo most recent installation in the Samurai Warriors game, Samurai Warriors Spirit of Sonata, that released, I think, on Tuesday. But instead, I actually picked up one of their other games, in fact, one of their oldest, at least Koei's oldest games, first being released back in 1983, Nobunaga's Ambition.
Oh.
Okay, so before we move on, because this is more of a question of not the game that you'll be talking about. They keep making games, right? Like, there's a lot of games in the series. Are they retelling the same story? Are they just different parts? Like, is each game only a year's time? Or, like, how does that work?
Which one? Samurai Warriors or Nobunaga's Ambition?
Nobunaga's Ambition, because...
the same for both of them. So
yeah, I just meant Nobunaga's.
Yeah, so Nobunaga's, what's different about it, so it starts... you have different scenarios that you can play, which represent some of the different battles. Obviously, your Sekigahara, your battle for Osaka, those battles are going to be really big. Then some of them are smaller ones, different unification areas. Some of them even small enough, a minor scuffle between the Date and, what's the tiny clan that was just north of them?
I don't know.
Yeah, but you have those little kind of scenarios. But in any of the given scenarios, you can choose to be any of the clans that are
right
in that time frame. And so you could be playing, let's say, the time frame of Sekigahara, but you're playing as the Shimazu, and you can turn around and go ally with the Date, and then the two of you guys just crush both the Eastern and the Western armies. So once you start, it kind of is like Civilization in that fact.
Yeah, but I'm talking about they're like, I don't know how many games are in Nobunaga Ambition. Like, I saw quite a few when I looked at the list. And are they just different time periods of his life, or they don't like none of them encompass the whole thing?
Well, even though it's called Nobunaga's Ambition, you do not have to play as Nobunaga. You don't.
Right, I know you can play as different people.
I think what he's asking is like, is it just the same time period, like over and over?
Would I just be playing the same one over and over?
In that case, yes, it's literally about the Sengoku period, from its effective start to its effective end with essentially the Osaka Summer Siege campaign. But like to get to really your question, they're essentially the same thing because they're covering real history, romanticized, and it's more fictional history in that regard. But generally, each game brings something new to the table, changes how it approaches it, updates the graphics.
So I guess the stories not really change a whole lot? Well,
no, because it's kind of based off of history. I mean, if you're in it to play like the story, of the characters, of like kind of like how the history played it out, they might change how some of that story is told, but Nobunaga still dies, spoilers alert, at Honnoji, regardless of how he gets there.
That's what I was just kind of wondering.
Yeah, it's more equatable to Civilization if you had like a little bit of a structure, because you can do, like, if you take, at least in the most recent ones, if you take the exact path that history did, quests will keep popping up, and their purpose is kind of to like show you how the way history went. But you can totally ignore the quests and rewrite history every single time you play. Again, kind of go, you can start off as some minor officer if you so wanted, or you can jump in immediately starting off as Tokugawa and immediately crush Nobunaga before he even starts doing anything. It has that kind of freedom of, let's see what happens if I do this, type deal.
So
a little bit.
The games are obviously more about the gameplay then.
Yeah. There is a story again in the kind of like following the quests, because if you do follow the quests, you get these little cutscenes. But the cutscenes, they're still life animations, if that makes sense, and they kind of just give you a little bit of a narrative, and then it goes immediately into the next month, and then you kind of just keep going.
So which one did you pick up?
So the one that I picked up is the most recent one, Sphere of Influence Ascension, which
it's a longest title.
We're getting Kingdom Hearts now.
I know, right?
Yeah, right.
Chain of Memories,
Sphere of Influence.
The only Nobunaga's Ambition game I've played is the Pokemon one.
Yep, Pokemon Conquest?
Yep.
Like that, yeah. But even that one technically was, I think, more styled like Fire Emblem or Final Fantasy.
It was that. So.
Yeah, because this game,
It's pretty much almost like a. It almost reminds me of Shogun too, in concept for how it plays.
So Shogun is a bit of a strategy war game, but it does focus, like, you can see how many units you have on the field. And
Yeah.
everything. Nobunaga's Ambition, and again, this is going to be a little bit of a mouthful. It's a turn-based grand strategy role-playing simulation war
God.
game RPG.
What?
Only Koei Tecmo.
But
No, you can't just mash every genre together and go that.
I didn't hear first-person shooter.
Thank God it's not one.
but so
I was
to
almost
break it down,
actually no. Hold on a second. I want to make a point here. I was just reading it up, and apparently it's not a first-person shooter, but you can get down to the officer level, like you're actually on the battlefield. So it's almost like third person.
Yeah. Well, and I'll get to that here in a second. So to break it down, really what it's saying is it's turn-based. So you're not. The thing is, though, even though it's turn-based, it's a simultaneous turn-based. Again, kind of like Civilization is a little bit where you give your commands and then you hit play, and then everybody goes and does the commands for the month, and then you go through your next. They call it council phase. You say, okay, we're gonna clear out this area for the castle. We're gonna build a rice paddy over here. We're gonna send these units over this way. And then hit play, and then watch them all interact. And then you can always pause it. But once you hit that point,
So
people.
it's a lot more, but the combat's probably the main focus, right?
Yeah,
Of the game.
yeah.
It's not. So it's not like a 4X.
I would
No.
better surmise it. It's a very much a simulation type game that's less like a farm simulator or a very specific thing, and more of a very covering of war, of politics, of
and that's where it's
governing.
called the grand strategy aspect of that big long genre title. Grand strategy games are your strategy games where you're dealing almost like on a nation's economic level or political level or military level or what have you, where you're not going to the battle. You're not really going down and being that one character on the battlefield. It's more, I have this abstract number, or this abstract representation of a large number of people, and I'm only at one unit that I'm kind of maneuvering, but I'm maneuvering it as a whole unit, and I'm not really controlling any one particular person. And on the screen, it'll show, let's say it'll show 300 figures, but that's supposed to represent 30,000 fighters or something. I don't know what the actual ratio is, but it's along those lines. But because it's this grand macro scale, tactics take a backseat to the strategy aspect, if that makes sense. You're dealing more with, I want all of my different armies to go do, I want you to go here, I want you to go here, I want you guys to coordinate your attack this way. You're also, at that same time, going to each of your castles and saying, look, you're in a rice production area, we need you to clear out this forest to build some more rice paddies. But you are in the middle of the mountains, so you need to dig a mine. And as you grow your castles and your castle towns around them, you get what's called districts as you clear out land. And in each district, you can then put in a specialized, like your rice paddies, your farms, your barracks, your mines, etc., depending on what you want them to do.
The type of game is really just when they say grand strategy, they mean like you're kind of covering everything. You are literally strategizing everything.
It's at the macro level, and you're micromanaging at the same time.
Yeah. So
like it is like you can literally spend. I think one of the games I played, I spent almost 4 hours in a 1 month turn because I had so much of Japan already covered, and I'm the kind of guy where I want to be able to tell each one of my single castles what to do. And when you realize how many castles that means across Japan's thing, it's a lot.
Yeah. You can. There are obviously ways you can set it up though, so that you can just have like your officers, your retainers, your other the lords underneath you. You can also set them up so they can do their own stuff as well.
Yep.
So you don't have to do that, but you can be that meticulous, like Tetsuo.
If you so desired. Exactly. Yep. You also don't necessarily have to unite all of Japan. They do have different victory conditions based off of what you want to do. Like some officers, if you're playing as not a daimyo, sometimes they want fame as opposed to unification. A certain level of fame within Japan. Others want money, so you have to, or prosperity, so you have to like reach a certain level of constant gold and rice production. Then you win. So it kind of depends on how exactly you're wanting your clan to dominate Japan. You could theoretically try to do a whole thing, no military whatsoever, do everything diplomacy. It does have a very robust and very in-depth diplomacy to the point where you can start, giving them nice things, but then you notice they have this one officer that they don't really pay attention to. So you start talking to him, and then he eventually convinces them to defect to your guys, and he brings all of the men underneath him to your army, and now they're less, or hey, we're gonna come attack the castle. Maybe you guys happen to be still not here yet to defend the castle, or whatever. So it has a lot of depth to it.
It's
its greatest strength, but it's also, I think, a little bit of its greatest weakness.
I would.
It's intimidating.
I mean, like, you're absolutely right. Like, you could do a lot with this game, with these kind of games. Like, grand strategies really do revolve around how you want to approach it. Because I mean, like, to his example, like, you could have this one officer who doesn't have like a lot of attention, but he has a lot of soldiers. Suddenly, those soldiers will join your side. You can convince them to join your side, and that suddenly exposes your opponent. And instead of marching on them with an army, you can just literally give them an ultimatum. It's like, surrender to us, or we will, siege you. And your opponent might be like, well, crap, I'm now cut off from my allies because this one guy I forgot about, wasn't there. And then they'll surrender to you, and you'll take over their territories through politics alone. So there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with these kind of games. I don't really know the details on this one specifically because I never played it, but I know what you're talking about. I've played this kind of before.
That's an aspect as well, yeah. So, like, if you say they have a castle, and the way you've conquered the castles that they had before it, you've essentially cut them off from the rest of them, or maybe it's like almost like a peninsula if you look at the way the territories are set up and everything. And by putting enough pressure on them and saying, look, behind you on all the roads, I have a whole bunch of men that are set up roadblocks. I could step in right now and just destroy you, or you guys can just join us. And I've even had it where, like, everybody in the castle says, yes, we're going to join you, but our two leaders said no. So here, we brought you 2 heads as a present. I've had that happen.
That's amazing.
Like we don't care. We just want to live. These guys were really the guys who, swore fealty to Toyotomi. So
you've been playing the Takeda clan, right? I'm assuming.
That's usually who I play, yes. But actually, right now, who I'm playing is the Saigo clan.
Okay, or all like the classic factions in the game, basically.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And again, it depends on what era you're deciding to play your particular thing at, but and that'll determine like the way that the clans are already distributed. But like if you start later on, you're not going to have some of the clans that got wiped out.
Yeah.
If you're playing early on, you might not have some of the clans that didn't come to prominence until later.
How are they all different? Do they just have like different starting holdings, or
pretty much that's it? It's
production?
just different starting holdings and different banners. There's not
like different units or anything like that.
There really isn't.
So you don't have like the like gun monks and stuff like that.
No, I mean they are there sort of, but what it more comes down to is whenever you earlier, whether it's directing people, clearing land, building stuff, going and doing political stuff, it depends on you will take one of your officers and you'll say, hey, look, you're going to be the guy in command of this, and all of the officers, there's like something like I think it's on the order of like in this game named officers.
You cut off there for a sec. Sorry.
I said that I think that there was like something on the order of like 25,000 officers in this game, all named officers, all guys that have been found on like census rolls and everything. So like actually existing people. Based off of what their stats are, will determine how strong their how fast does it take them to clear this land? How well of a rice paddy are they going to build? Et cetera, et cetera. And so based off of having them, they will also have some small abilities. So when you get to battle, you can utilize their abilities. So Shingen Takeda, he does give you a bonus if you're going to focus on charging, and especially if you're charging with more horsemen. Whereas Saigo Takamori, he's going to give you a bonus to your riflemen if you're being defensive. The Chosokabe, Motochika, he's going to give you a bonus if you're doing a lot of peasant conscripts. So that's how it starts to factor that in, as opposed to giving you units. Each of the officers get those abilities. But as you conquer different castles, as you go and convince them to join your team or whatnot, you then can get them. So I could have Shingen Takeda, I could have not Saigo Takamori, and whoever on my team. So
okay, cool. That's neat. Yeah, it seems to me just looking at it like a Civ game. What was the there Civ Revolutions? It wasn't the number one.
Sorry, say that again.
There was like a Civ Revolutions or something like that, and it wasn't like one of the numbered versions of the game.
Yeah,
I remember it was on 360.
Yeah, that one.
When I saw it, that's what it reminded me a lot of, where you have kind of like your units, you move them around, but it was more about like production and like advancing your society. Obviously, you're not advancing your society in this, but like the micromanaging of all the stuff.
Because it's a turn-based strategy game in that sense.
Yeah.
But it does have a fundamental different feel to it because, so take battles, for example. Whenever you, not only do you have to make sure that you have the men that you can send, but you have to have enough food to be able to send with them, or else they're going to starve because they're out in the field, and or if you don't conquer the castle to raid their wares or whatever.
Yeah.
It's I don't really know how to describe it. It's
just more detailed, basically.
More detailed, but at the same time,
its combat.
Yeah, well, but it's
you
also
have to manage
more...
like logistics of managing an army and stuff like that.
Yeah,
it's a little bit more focused. Like I think in regards to because I've never really played Civ, but from what I understand of Civ is not. Civ is almost like about progressing through. There's definitely micro and macro to it, but
you're growing a civilization.
Yeah, whereas in this game,
throughout thousands of years,
you're trying to unify Japan and become the shogun, right?
Yeah, so you're very stuck to your time period, heavily so, almost I would say super glued to it, really.
Yeah, you're not making laser guns.
No, there's no Apaches flying in to take out your opposing samurai.
Damn it, Gandhi!
I will say the Date clan and the Hojo clan are the Gandhis of this. They'll be like, "Hey, we present you with a present," and like the next month they have 40,000 people on your front door, and you're like,
"Hey, we'd like to invade you. Is that cool?" No, Date, what the hell?
like, no, go away.
Go, get off my lawn, or I'm gonna call the cops.
This game actually allows you to like make alliances and then break the alliances in the middle of the alliance, because I know some of the Civ games kind of lock you into it, at least for the amount of time that you promise for it. This one, it doesn't, and so you could very easily say, "Hey, I'm your ally. Don't attack me for the next year." And they're like, "Cool," and then they send like all of their forces to the north, and then you're like, "I was kidding," and just tear them apart. But they will do the same thing. Like the AI in this game is very, even on normal, it's very ruthless, yeah, but it's also it's very human. Like the way it feels, it does a really good job of modeling like nations, like how they would react, and the type of mental games between nations that you would get. I don't know. It's really well done in that regard. It does feel like there's times where you don't feel like you're playing against even on normal. You don't feel like you're playing against a computer. You feel like you're actually playing against multiple thinking nations. So they will sometimes come in and specifically hit your food production, which is way deep into your lands, and then screw you over for all winter and fall, because now you have no food and now you can't send anybody anywhere, and you're losing peasants left and right.
Build up your resources again and all that stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think it's just a little bit more focused, as like going back to the point of it. It's a little bit more focused than Civ on managing
like a military, basically.
Yeah, military along with the political structure that you have, as opposed to where you kind of just build up units, send them out, and then they do stuff.
And political is a good point of it too. Like not just like the diplomacy and stuff, but you have
policies
that you can enact. Yeah, and so you can like change like the way that you're ruling and you're governing, and you can do it like in an instant, and it really does make a difference. It's not like Civ where it's kind of like, I'm going to choose this and I get this passive bonus, but there's a very tangible difference between be doing a lot of taxation versus somebody who's getting a lot of conscripts versus somebody who's very progressive in thinking and is kind of like, we can trust the populace to govern themselves.
Probably not a good idea.
You do see tangible differences.
And then obviously you have like, generals and whatnot beneath you who might, betray you if you don't give them attention, or if you don't give them, proper, rewards for serving you well, they might, either lose favor in you, or they might start doing things They might start, governing differently than you. They might, the worst one is always just they'll betray you and leave, or they might even start in a rebellion themselves. And then if you don't take care of your populace as well, if you treat them like shit, they might get peasant rebellions, and that will, obviously affect your harvests and whatnot.
So you're telling me it ain't easy being a daimyo.
I'm telling you, it's incredibly easy being daimyo. Just put them all to the blade.
Oh,
but that's one of the cool things.
Don't say that in front of Mal.
But one of the cool things too is kind of the scale for your officers. You yourself always play as daimyo, but who you are focused on as an officer can change. And so you have these different like levels. You have the local lords. You have the castle lords. You have, I think they call them chamberlains or something. You have your regents, you have your advisors, and then you have the daimyo himself. And so part of that too is like if you take one of your advisors and you turn around, you put him in charge of making sure this field gets made correctly. Well, he might have the best stat for that. But he's not going to be happy that you just took your advisor and said, go work out in the fields, make sure that rice paddy becomes a rice paddy. Like, he's like, no, like, I should be advising. I should be sitting on the council. Like, no, I'm not going out there. So you might give him a treasure teapot to make sure he goes and does it, or something.
It was tempting me when I was watching the video. I was like, holy moly, this is too much for me.
It's you have to invest time into it. It's like I said, if you've ever played like a Total War game, you're gonna have to invest time into it. If you've played Civ, you're gonna have to invest time into it.
This is more investing. I played Total War like long ago, so my memory's kind of fuzzy on that one. But for Civ, this one's more your resource dependent. Like your time investment in this is larger than it is even in Civ.
I would actually agree with that, because I've seen like Civ games can sometimes take like super long. Like they can go like 8 hours or even like 12 or something. But I mean, when you play a Total War game or something, like you can go a month worth of like afternoons and you will still be attempting to succeed and conquer and whatnot.
That's the way this very much is in that regard. So each turn is a month. But if you're trying to micromanage every little thing, that means you go through every single castle, in your lands, which when you start off, it's really small. Your turn could be only 5 minutes. But later on, when you have like half of Japan, you're going into each and every castle and you're saying, okay, you have 30,000 men. Here's what I want you to do with all your men. All right, now you have 15,000 peasants. This is what I want you to do with all of them. All right, now let's say how you're going to grow. Okay, cool. We've done this castle. Let's go to the next castle. And that's not counting anything that you're doing of diplomacy. That's not even getting into the battles yet. This is just, the micromanagement. So it can, if you're not letting the NPCs handle a lot of the stuff, you can easily spend multiple hours on a turn. But it's engrossing. It's not tedious. Like that's the thing. Like it is in depth, it is micromanaging, but it's not like the tedious kind of micromanaging, because everything is still like actively going, and it's still stuff that you can get involved with, I guess. As opposed to just giving a blank command.
And like at the end of the day, though, too, you can also get through turns pretty quickly, because again, you could just assign an officer with like an idea of like, here's kind of like what I want you to do, and then just have them autopilot, and then your turns can be pretty quick actually. So it really just it's also depending on how much you want to personally invest. So your game can actually be very quick if you aren't really meticulous about every little thing. You just might have to deal with the
more peasant uprisings or more officers turning on you.
Yeah, you might have to deal with the fallout of certain things not getting done, and at the time you really, really want them, unless you're, meticulously touching everything. But, that might be how you like to play.
Well, I think I'm going to stick to my backlog. Instead of adding another game on top of all the other stuff I have.
You know what I forgot? You know what I forgot to add real fast for my Stormblood thing? You get swimming now. We can swim, which I don't understand what was never the thing before. No, you couldn't. I thought that was really weird.
So weird.
I know, but now you can. So,
in connection to that, I think the original Sphere of Influence, or it was one of the ones before it, was when they finally introduced naval battles into Nobunaga's Ambition. So you
can swim there too.
So you can swim there too. That's great.
Back to Tales of Berseria for me.
Oh my god.
Thinking about maybe asking GameFly to send me a Romance of the Three Kingdoms next, because again, that's a Dynasty
Oh my
Warriors,
god.
Samurai Warriors.
That's oof.
Yeah, it's literally Nobunaga's Ambition, but in China during the Warring States era for China as opposed to Japan. Exactly like Dynasty Warriors and Samurai Warriors. That's their difference.
Just go watch Redcliffe.
Ah,
I mean,
that's a topic to talk about, ain't that?
We need to talk about that someday. Have you seen it, Tets?
I've seen large portions of it. I've not actually sat down to watch it all the way
You
through.
need to watch the whole
Watch the
4-hour
whole
version
thing.
of it.
Yep.
If you guys haven't picked it up, I don't really do movies a lot.
You got to find time for this one, man. It's
yeah, this is one.
Don't talk about it. It's a topic for a different day. Can't talk about it.
Go play it.
All right, this has been episode 11 of Podcast of Five Rings, your source of enlightenment in the realm of video games, tabletop, anime, film, and tech. Each episode of Podcast of Five Rings releases Monday mornings on iTunes and SoundCloud. Now topic by topic, day by day on YouTube, with the full video releasing on Fridays. Check us out on our social media. We are on Twitter at Podcast5R, Facebook at P5R Podcast. Meta has a stream. He's going to be streaming Stormblood really soon. Watch him grind. Grind that samurai up. He's at twitch.tv/PSO Flow. This is Obsidian signing out. We'll see you guys next week with more L5R fiction.
Probably, yeah.
Make sure to check us out on monthly modules too.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
You got a new one coming on up.
Our final monthly module is about to release. So,
Yep. And then we're gonna be starting our new one soon.
Mecha versus Kaiju.
Rawr.
Later,
everyone.
Later, guys.
See ya.